We are in the midst of 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. And what is gender-based violence? Gender-based violence is any kind of violence inflicted on you because of your gender. It is normally targeted against women and girls, but men and boys can also be targets. There are many different forms of gender-based violence: domestic violence, human trafficking, sexual exploitation, honor killings, acid attacks, sexual harassment, forced marriages, and the list goes on. For today, I'll be focusing on the active bystander approach to combat sexual harassment. Now picture this. Nadia is a young woman. She's very optimistic. She's a very happy, cheerful person. She's always smiling. She joins an office. Most of her colleagues tend to like her. She warms up to everybody. Her supervisor, Jamil, however, compliments her, but those compliments are a little odd. He uses slangs such as hottie and sugar, words which Nadia does not appreciate. Those compliments then go a little further and take a very strange turn. Jamil slowly and gradually compliments Nadia's clothing and says that her clothing is perhaps covering too much of what he calls her appealing body. Again, this makes Nadia very uncomfortable. He also compliments her smile and calls it inviting and sensual. Nadia slowly and gradually becomes a little aloof. Saqib, her co-worker, notices this, but he doesn't say anything. He doesn't feel it's his place to comment on this situation. However, as time goes by, Saqib notices other things happening in the office as well. Whenever he passes by Nadia's desk, he sees Jamil very close to her. He's standing in very close physical proximity to her, so much so that his body is almost touching hers. And what is Nadia's reaction? She is extremely reluctant. She looks terrified and she wants to walk away, but she is rather afraid to do so. Saqib doesn't feel it's his place to intervene, so he ignores the situation. One day during a meeting, when most of the other co-workers are busy and engrossed in a discussion, Jamil takes the opportunity and sits close to Nadia. She seems a little shattered, but she doesn't move away, again probably because of the fear factor. He takes the liberty of touching her hand and whispers something in her ear. Nadia has tearful eyes, she makes an excuse and she dashes off. Saqib sees this as well. Now, what can Saqib do in all of these situations? And here I'm going to talk about the 5 strategies of bystander intervention. An active bystander is a person who sees something wrong happening and tries to intervene in order to help the victim, in this case a victim of what is potentially sexual harassment. So, the 5 Ds. Saqib could document what he is seeing. He could note down the dates. He could note down the different places where he has seen the harassment taking place. He could also, if he feels appropriate, take pictures and perhaps even record a video where he's seeing Jamil commit this harassment. But one has to be very mindful of the fact that if you have documented some sort of an evidence, sort of video evidence of sexual harassment, you cannot and you should not share it anywhere else without the victim's consent. In fact, the victim is the first person who you should approach and present the document to. So the first point is documentation. The second is delegation. If Saqib doesn't feel that it's his place to say anything, he could always delegate the matter to somebody who's in a position of authority and who could look into this matter closely, namely the boss, in this case Mrs. Ali. He could report the matter to her directly. The third point is direct confrontation. If Saqib does feel that he's strong and bold enough, and if he also feels that there is no danger from Jamil's side, he could always confront him and he could always stand up for what he feels is right. He could tell him that his actions are wrong, they constitute harassment, and he could also point to the anti-harassment policy that almost every workplace has. The fourth point is the delaying tactic. Whenever Saqib has seen Nadia afraid and sad, and each time Jamil has walked off, that is the opportunity when Saqib could approach Nadia, he could sit with her, he could talk to her, ask her how she's feeling, and he could ask her whether there's anything that he could do for her, whether there's anything he could do to help her. The last point, and probably the most important, is what's called distraction. Saqib had many opportunities where he witnessed Jamil harassing Nadia firsthand. Even if he was rather afraid of a direct confrontation, he could always have approached Jamil and said, "Oh Jamil, could you just tell me the time please? Oh Jamil, we had to work on a particular project. Can we sit together and discuss that now? Oh Jamil, I think that Mrs. Ali was calling you. That's what I heard. Could you just go and see what she was calling you about?" So these are all the different ways of dealing with this abhorrence called sexual harassment. My message to you all today is, let's be active bystanders, let's be ambassadors for change, and let's all try to combat this abhorrence called sexual harassment. Let's all be active bystanders.